Hello, Chelan County. I am Lacy Stockton, and this is our Power Hour, which I'm really excited about. We have two guests with us today. Our featured guest is Richard DeRock from Link Transit, and we also have Dr. Jim the Solar Man White joining us again in case you have any questions about your electric vehicles. And today we are talking about getting around lean and green throughout Chelan County and beyond, whether you're taking public transit, or your own ride, or your own bicycle, maybe not today. But we're going to be chatting about all those different options and really how Link has done all these amazing things with their electric buses. There's some new electric vehicle charging that's coming out, all the ways that Link has really pushed the industry forward in terms of our local transportation. So I hope you enjoy. Hi, Richard.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing?
Doing well.
Yeah, staying cool.
Pretty much. It's been an interesting challenge. So.
Yeah, and you're down at the Columbia Station building.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah. Happily down here. The air conditioning's working better here than it is out at the operations space. So.
Okay. So your operations base is looking like my operations base, which is why I'm at Scott Stanford's house, is because I don't have AC at my house right now.
Yeah, well, we have some, but it's weak out at the operations space right now, so it's a little challenging.
Oh man. Well, it's supposed to gradually cool off over the next, week or two. So we're looking forward to that. Thank you so much for joining us. We also have Jim with us. Dr. Jim, how are you doing?
Good.
Yeah.
Staying cool in here. It's exceedingly hot outside today.
It's hot. It's hot outside for sure. And you're at Chelan PUD's HQ. Our new HQ is getting built, of course, down there at Old Station. And you're here to field any customer questions that they have about their personal rides, while Richard talks about our shared ride.
Yeah, I hope to talk about Richard's stuff too, because they're doing amazing things. Link Transit is really way out in front in a very positive way. So
yeah. Absolutely. I'm really excited to hear about all these updates. I mean, Richard just gave us like a little sneak peek, and in the last year and 2 years, it's like light years. I feel already out of date. So I'm going to hop right in. And Richard, can you just kind of give us a high level overview of what is Link up to, what's new, what's coming down the pike?
Sure. So, well, let me talk just a bit about what we're doing overall. So, we went to the ballot in August of 2019 with a service plan to change transit here in our community. And the community voted to increase service. And so we've gone out and done a pretty substantial service redesign study to look at how to make service better in our community. And we actually implemented some of the services that were in that ballot initiative. We started Sunday service for the first time ever last July. And we expanded Saturday services and did that in the middle of a pandemic, which was kind of an interesting situation. But we also had to deal with the pandemic, which in the public transit world has been probably the single largest change we've seen in the industry ever. Nationwide, we've seen transit ridership fall anywhere between 50 and 80%, which is just astounding numbers. And here at Link, we didn't see anywhere near that significant a drop in ridership. Initially, we saw probably in the range of 60%, and it bounced back to about a 40% drop pretty quickly, which was an indication of how many of our riders were really those essential workers that had to get to and from their employment, or they were going to get food, or they were using this to get to pharmacies and medical appointments, those types of things that really that was what they needed. And it was they were important trips that had to be done. That sort of continued. We've regrown our system to about weekdays, about 70% of where we were pre-COVID. Saturdays, we're about 105% of where we were pre-COVID. Sundays, we're ahead of where we thought we would be. We're doing about 800, 900 trips a day on Sundays, and we have a pretty limited Sunday schedule right now.
Can I interject? I am curious. Sure. So I know that Link Transit does more than Chelan County. Mm-hmm. Where all do you operate?
So we operate, well, in all 19 communities in Chelan County and all of East Wenatchee, Waterville, Orondo, and Douglas County. So our boundaries are all of Chelan County and the Eastmont and Waterville and Orondo school districts in Douglas County. So the more populated parts of Douglas County.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Sure. And so relatively speaking, we're doing, actually, I was on a national call, and from what I can tell, we've got maybe the highest ridership of any system in the country in terms of since COVID, in terms of percentage of what we're doing. But we're still down from where we were previously, and that's not, again, that's what everyone's dealing with. But we're still trying to move forward with what we promised the community. And in the midst of that, we're also doing our electric bus program. And we made a major change in our vehicle fleet right in the middle of all these things going on. We took delivery of 10 new battery electric buses in December and January from BYD, who is the vehicle manufacturer we've been working with for the last 4 years. And of these 10 vehicles, these were an actual follow-on the ones we'd had previously. BYD, our original delivery in 2017, didn't quite work the way we needed it to when it was very hot and when it was cold. The batteries overheated when it was extremely hot when we were charging, and they couldn't work exactly the way we needed when it was cold.
So what you're saying is, if today would have happened then, you wouldn't have been in a great spot.
Exactly. The bus would have worked, but it would not have been able to recharge in the afternoon, and which would shorten the length of the time we could have used the bus. And that was the problem we were having with those 2017 and 18 buses. And our contract, we were concerned that was going to be a problem for us. And so we had actually written that into our contract that if it didn't meet those performance standards, the BYD was going to fix that for us. And they, in fact, did. They built us a new designed bus that had a temperature managed system. And so these new vehicles were delivered in December and January, and they've solved that problem. The batteries now have a temperature management system that deals with the heat. And for the cold, we worked with a company out of Spokane called Hot Start that has a heating system that keeps the batteries warm in the winter and keeps the system at an even operating temperature, which allows them to work just fine in the winter. And we had a great time over the winter. And so we were able to solve both those problems, which really makes the batteries work really effectively. And so we've put almost.
So so this is something I never thought about. I mean, I think about with a diesel. Mm-hmm. Sometimes if it gets super cold, you have to give a little heat love to your diesel engine to get to turn over. But I didn't think about this. Jim, is this a common issue with electric vehicles, like on a smaller scale, or is there something about the size of the bus? Like, why does temperature matter?
So the range on electric vehicles drops when it gets colder. So by increasing the temperature and keeping the batteries warm, you can keep the range going. That's awesome. And the fact that the Link Transit buses are using a different form for actually heating the bus instead of using the batteries, they can continue to operate and get the range throughout the winter, which is outstanding. And I don't know if people realize it, but Link Transit, we are just way out. We think they actually, and the work that Richard has done.
Hey, it's all about the community.
Take credit for it.
Yeah.
But they're just outstanding, and they're just so far out in front of the nation in terms of their charging network and what they've learned and what they've put together in the system. And now with these induction chargers, these wireless induction charger, where the bus just pulls over this charger, and while they're parked there for 5-10 minutes or however long that they're parked there, they can be getting this very fast charge to give unlimited range. This is just something that doesn't happen in the rest of the world or the country. So we're way out in front. And I think that Chelan County and Wenatchee and all of us should be real proud of the work that Chelan and that Link Transit has done here. It's phenomenal.
For sure. We even have a little love note here. Jenna is saying that we love Sunday transit in the Chelan area. They use it as an easy way to visit Manson for the day, and they don't have to worry about parking, which is pretty cool. I'm sure that this is also true for Leavenworth. Leavenworth parking can be a hot mess. And so hopping on I believe the 22 up there can be a really easy solution. Could you talk just a little bit about these sort of, we think about transit within the city, but there's also between the city. How does that work, Richard?
Well, and we run quite a bit of service between Leavenworth and Chelan. We do, I think it's 28 round trips a day to Leavenworth and 24 round trips a day to Chelan. And those are quite long distances. The Chelan buses a couple of those vehicles have to go almost 500 miles a day, which is currently beyond the range that an electric bus can do. The Leavenworth routes are about 305, 310 miles, which has been beyond the range of electric buses as well. However, with these wireless chargers we just energized, we've now made it within the range of our electric vehicles. And that's So
you're saying electric is now happening or is able to happen between Wenatchee and Leavenworth all day, all of those.
It's going to be phased in. We have to get the buses there to do it, but yes, that is the intention. We've actually run it, and we just energized these wireless chargers that are capable of making this happen, and literally in the last 2 weeks. We have the first ones that have ever been built that they can do this. And it allows us to charge these vehicles at the 35-foot coaches that we've got for this can charge at 230 kilowatts of wireless power, and the charges adapt, which means I can put about 4 to 5 kilowatts a minute back into the vehicle. Our drivers get about 1.9 kilowatts a mile, so that gives me, in terms of about 3 miles of range per minute they are on the charger. And with that, plus the 190 miles of range the bus comes with when I charge it overnight, I can make that bus go about 350 to 400 miles, which gives us the range to do all of our in-town routes and our Leavenworth uneven service up the Upper Valley. Chelan's still a little bit out of the range, but we think that's coming. We're getting closer to it. And it may be the next generation of the battery structure that can do that. We're getting some vehicles, hopefully next week, that are the next generation battery, which is a little stronger and can take a faster charge, and very well may allow us to do the Chelan routes.
Here's another question for you. So Owen is asking, has Link looked into hydrogen-powered buses?
Yes, we have. And hydrogen doesn't make any sense in our environment, unfortunately. It's because what a hydrogen bus is essentially it's an battery electric bus with a fuel cell to do the conversion to electric. So you have all the complexity of the battery electric bus, plus you have the fuel cell conversion. And while this technology is being looked at in a lot of places, and it makes sense in certain environments, here where we have clean electric power and its rates are reasonable, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to convert the electricity to hydrogen first and then convert it back to electricity. In Southern California, where some of their power is coal-based or where the demand charges are so expensive, so the electricity doesn't cost a lot, hydrogen actually makes sense in that environment. And so some of my compatriots in the industry are actively looking at hydrogen as a way to manage the cost of the system. But when we've looked at it, it makes more sense for us to stay electric in the current structure. And that's been something we've worked with Jim on, doing those calculations of how we can manage the cost. And we couldn't make the business case to either to use wayside storage or to do hydrogen in order to manage the cost. The PUD's cost structure for us is such that it just makes sense to use it the way that we're doing it. And we keep the price way below what diesel is. In fact, our cost of operating these buses is coming in at about 24 cents a mile, and that's all cost, maintenance, tires, energy, where a diesel bus is costing us right now about 68 cents a mile. So it's about a little less than, what was that, about 55%, 60% savings. And that actually pays for the difference in the cost of the bus.
Huh, wow. Okay, that's really interesting. So what about, does the calculus change at all if you're talking about longer trips with hydrogen?
Maybe. And that's the other reason people are looking at hydrogen is theoretically you can get longer range with hydrogen. And the reason I said maybe is they're not really sure where they've tried this in terms of making the range work. They can't get the speeds. The fuel cells that are available today for using in the vehicles don't generate enough energy to run the vehicle at high enough speed. So you have to put so many batteries on it to run your boat motor. Keeping it at a constant speed is difficult. So the type of service we do, the really long distance highway speed, doesn't seem to work with the fuel cells we currently have. It might work for the kind of freeway driving they do in Southern California where it's stop and go and the speeds are not quite as high. And so, I mean, I have a friend that runs one of the transit systems down in Los Angeles, and it seems to make sense in his environment. But when we've looked at the curves here, it doesn't pencil out the way that it does down there.
Okay, so maybe it's sort of like with the battery, where like maybe as things progress and maybe as things change, it might make sense on some routes potentially, but with the rate structure here in Chelan County, just straight electric is kind of the way to go right now.
Well, and if fuel cells continue to develop, that could change. Right now, the fuel cells are very promising in smaller vehicles, and I think they might have real application in the smaller vehicles we operate. And I actually kind of think that might be an application for us, but in the full-size buses, I'm not sure it makes sense. And if they improve and the fuel cell becomes more efficient, then maybe it does make sense. But right now, they don't have those available in a way that costs out possible.
And one other thing too is regarding the energy efficiency. It does take energy. You know, even if you're converting from electricity into hydrogen, you've got about an 80% conversion efficiency. So you're losing 20. And then when you convert it back from, even if you have a very efficient fuel cell, you get another 80%. So 0.8 times 0.8, you're still losing 35% of the energy. And when you're looking at battery energy, we're putting that energy into the battery. There's a little bit of loss through like the wireless induction charging, or when you're charging that battery, you don't get all of it, doesn't go into as energy. Some of it comes off as heat. So there's a loss, but the losses in a battery electric buses are much smaller than they are for hydrogen.
Yeah. Absolutely. So if people are just joining us, we are streaming live with Richard DeRock, General Manager of Link Transit, and Chelan PUD's own Dr. Jim White, who is our Senior Energy Efficiency Engineer. And we're talking about how to get around in Chelan County, whether it's on your ride or Link's ride, clean, green electric vehicles. So we have a couple of questions here, Richard. There's one from John. He's asking about what the chances are of getting a shuttle route around the East Leavenworth Icicle Road Loop there through the River Valley that could potentially help parking for residents, visitors, and local employees by allowing them to get into town without having to park in town. What do you think?
Well, it's being looked at. The study that the board adopted last month calls for running the shuttle that we currently have, which runs from the park and ride we opened up 2 years ago, which is behind Safeway, and currently goes up to the Icicle Junction area. This would to take it down to the fish hatchery area at least 8 to 10 times a day to provide some of that additional access. And so that's more than likely going to happen. Whether we would actually use East Leavenworth Road is something we're looking at to see whether it makes sense. Additionally, there was some thought, and we have to see whether we can make it happen. But one of the things that was definitely put in as a need from the community was access to some of the trailhead work. And there's some real parking issues up the Icicle, at least in one or two of the major trailheads. And so we are looking to see if that's viable to make happen. King County does that in a couple other trails. And if we have the vehicles and can actually make that occur, that might be a benefit as well. So we already do part of that, and expanding on it is part of the plan.
Cool. And what is the process? I think, John has this question about Icicle Road. I know other folks that I've spoken with, they have their little projects and
Right.
things like that. How do people get in touch with you, or what's your process for adapting to the community needs?
So we just finished an outreach process, which the board adopted a framework of a service design. So what will happen now is our planning unit is taking that framework and is operationalizing it. They're pulling together how you would take those proposals and build schedules out of them, and looking at how we would roll those improvements out. And there were a whole series of recommendations that were made in terms of additional services that go forward. The questions and challenges that are in that are things like, well, when can we get additional buses? If you add service, you need additional bus. Right now, the delivery time on a new bus is 19 months to 2 years. So once you decide you're going to do a route, then you have to make an order, and it's 2 years before the vehicle arrives. And then we also have to have employees to do them. And that's actually a big challenge right now. Is we would probably do more service today. We have the resources to do more service. We don't have enough employees to do all the service that we need. One of the things that happened with COVID was a bunch of folks who were thinking about retirement, thinking about getting at that point, because we're 30 years old as an organization, retired early. And we had some of the people we had hired for expansion ended up backfilling retirement slots, and we don't have as many people as we would like to have to fill the expansion needs we have. So we're covering.
So you're looking for like chauffeurs and things like that. You're willing to train?
We're absolutely willing to train. We're absolutely, so people have seen our ads. We're looking for drivers. We need about 23 more drivers to meet the needs for the service expansion we've got planned already. And so if people
these are fantastic buses, right? Like these aren't like some old beaters.
No,
these are like top of the line, super quiet electric buses that folks will be driving around. Which I ran into a off-duty chauffeur down at Pybus one day. You had a bus down there, and he was actually like really proudly showing people around the bus and everything. And he was not on the clock. He was just really excited about it. So I think it's a good gig.
It is. It's a great job. So if people are interested, please check us out. It's a great career, and people that enjoy this stick with us. We've, like I said, we had a lot of 20 and 25-year people retire just recently, and it's a great opportunity as well.
Perfect. Yeah, and maybe we'll put a link in the chat as well if people are interested in that. Go ahead, Jim.
Hey, Richard, you mentioned something about some electric vehicle chargers. How many did you say that Link put in? Are they at the park and ride? And what's up with that?
So part of the grant that we got to put in our wireless charging system, we had some resources that were left over, and so we also have a mandate to do wireless charging in our park and ride lots. So we were able to install 19 car chargers in our park and ride lots, and these will be energized here in the next couple of days. So we've got 2 car chargers in our Leavenworth park and ride lot. We have 2 in our Big Y park and ride lot in Beshaston. We have 2 in a new park and ride lot it's a joint use park and ride lot at Country Boys in Cashmere. We have 2 at our new joint park and ride at the museum in Cashmere. We have 8 at our park and ride in Old Station, and we have 2 at our park and ride here in Columbia Station. And then we also added 1 to our park and ride in Entiat. So that takes us to 19 car chargers that we've added to the system here in Chelan County.
That's awesome. So those are car chargers that people can pull up, charge in their vehicle. Is it like through PlugShare or something? Are they charged? Do they pay for it? Do they just charge?
We're not allowed to charge for electricity because the state law, so they're free. So they're at no cost to the user. They are Clipper Creek chargers. They charge between 12 and 15 kilowatts for the cars. So whatever the cars need, and if people are using them the way they should be able to do a nice top up on their vehicles and get them where they need to go. Or if they going to have lunch in Leavenworth at a park and ride, they can park in the park and ride, charge their vehicle, take the shuttle into downtown, and go have lunch and come back and have their car topped off.
That's awesome, because that's more than doubling the number of level 2 chargers in the county. So that's great. That's really good to hear.
Wow. Okay, that's exciting. Yeah, and we'll drop also Link will drop also a link. Link Transit will drop a link in the chat with a map of those, and I'll also add those to the Chelan PUD website. I think there's this great app that Jim mentioned last time. If Jim, you want to do a plug for that app?
Yes, a plug for PlugShare. So
yeah,
plugshare.com. If you get the app for your phone, it'll tell you which chargers are out there. It doesn't always tell you exactly which ones are being used at the moment, but it gives people's comments, and then it's opportunity to see where they're at and how many there are and information about each of the chargers. So highly recommend that, plugshare.com.
Yeah, and we've got ours set up to go on to them. They should be, I think the final inspection's happening tomorrow on the last one of them, and so they should be energized and available for the public probably next week.
Awesome.
Okay, Richard, we got another question here.
Okay.
So Hassan is asking, how much of the battery charging happens during peak hours in winter and summer? It seems like the last couple of days could have been hard for charging. Is there a way that you can coordinate with us at the PUD to maybe charge off peak and give the grid a little bit of a break?
It's interesting. We've actually spent a lot of time talking to the PUD about this, and the peak at the PUD is not when you think it would be. And so charging during the day for our vehicles actually is not when the peak is. And so it really doesn't cause much of an issue. We have worked with them to make sure that we're not simultaneously using our wireless chargers at the highest amperage all at the same time. That's part of the way we manage the cost and also manages the grid structure. The peak actually is at night when we're charging, and so we have worked with the PUD to make sure that we're minimizing those issues. And that goes to the fact in the winter is when the peak really ends up being, because we heat by electric as well. So like I said, it's not what you would normally think the peak is, and we had to do some work trying to work on that issue to make sure we were managing that demand, because we don't want to drive the cost, and it's economical for us to do it that way as well, because it keeps our price down.
Yeah, and this is such a great conversation, because especially right now as we get these heat waves throughout not just Chelan County, but the entire Western grid, there are some utilities that are really looking at what time are people using power, at what time. And so to collaborate with the PUD on such a large charging infrastructure such as Link Transit's buses really makes sense. But then, there's other things that we as a community can start talking about in terms of when we as homeowners decide to crank our heat up in winter or throw in a load of hot wash. All of these little things, I know that with Link, you have kind of your own dedicated system in terms of bringing in power to be able to charge the buses when you need it. But when we talk about each of our little communities that makes up our local grid, we will, I think, start talking a little bit more about this time of when we're using electricity. So I really appreciate this. That's great.
And if our volume starts increasing to a point that it's become more of a challenge, the strategy that we've looked at, and we actually thought we were going to do it this year, and Jim, working with Jim and the PUD, decided not to do it right now because it just didn't make economic sense right now, is we would install large batteries at our facility, and what we would do is we would charge batteries to run the chargers, and so we'd be charging at a constant low rate, which would not impact the grid the same way, and then we would pull power from those batteries to run our wireless chargers at the higher rate and our plug-in chargers at night because they actually charge at a pretty high rate as well, but we'd be pulling from the batteries rather than from the grid as a way to even the demand on the grid. And that, like I said, if we get more vehicles and we get to a place where it really is going to be an issue, that is the strategy that makes the most sense. It just did make sense with the number of buses we had and the demand we were going to be pulling at this time. So that's in the future, and it's something that we've mapped out, and I think like I said, it's a good strategy, and I think it will protect all of us. But it doesn't make any sense to put it in until we needed it.
For sure. Problem for future Richard and Jim.
Exactly.
That's great. Cool. And if you are just joining us, I'm here with Richard DeRock of Link Transit and our own at the PUDs, Dr. Jim White. And we're talking about how to get around the county, whether it's in your vehicle or Link's vehicle or your bike, however you get around that is lean and green and hydro powered. I'm learning a lot today, including that there are new electric vehicle charging stations for free that Link put in around the county at their park and rides. Pretty cool. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments, and Richard and Jim will field those for you. I actually have a new one coming from Ida. She's asking, how come I see so many empty buses pass by on Western Avenue at all hours?
Well, I'm not sure where on Western she is, but part of the issue is that Western is at the end of routes. And if you think about how a route works, people get off and on a bus. And so you design your bus route so that you have the right size bus so that you have enough seats for people at its peak period. And people get off and on along the route. So you have to have enough seats for when you have the maximum number of people. But as people drop off, there are going to be periods when the bus is going to have very few people on it, or perhaps none, but then they pick up people later on as well. So that's part of the issue. Right now, we also have the issue that under the COVID rules, we were required to run larger buses, and a full bus under COVID standards was, for a full-size coach, was 11 people. For a smaller bus, it was 5 and 6. And so some places where we would normally run a small bus, we were having to run large vehicles, which made them look a lot emptier than they are. But that was part of social distancing issues. And those rules actually change tomorrow. We're actually able to go back to the previous standards. And so we'll see some shifting of the capacity things with the change in the governor's rules tomorrow.
And how has that worked with your vans? So I know that you have your main bus system, and then you have a service that is for other folks that may have, mobility issues or things like that. How does it work?
Well, so we have our regular fixed route system. We have our 10 electric buses right now. We have 2 more coming next week. And then we have another 3 that we've ordered. So we'll have 15 electric buses here relatively quickly. We think we're going to have another 6 ordered sometime this year, which will take us to about 22, 23 full-size electric buses. And so our full-size fleet, other than the buses going to Chelan, should be electrified within 2 years. The Chelan buses are the large 40-foot coaches. Those are diesel powered, and those are relatively new, so those will stay diesel for a while. The routes that go to, say, Waterville and Rock Island, some of the ones that go up in some of the neighborhoods are built on a van chassis, and those are also fixed route, and they're available to everybody, but those are smaller buses. They have been propane powered, and that was our intention this last year, but the COVID crisis has not made tanks available, so we haven't been able to get those vehicles converted. So they're running on gasoline currently, and we'll see whether they ever get converted at this point, because the mileage are getting up on those. We don't have an electric option for that size of bus right now, and we're hoping that's going to change, so we'll have to see how that plays out. Then the very small vehicles are our Link Plus vehicles for people with disabilities. And we have minivans, and we have Ford Transit vans that we use for that service. And those are for people that can't physically either get to a bus stop or deal with the weather conditions, or there's no curb cuts that allow them to access the fixed route system, something environmentally or a combination disability. And
so Ida is asking, so she says that she's 84. So does she have to have, does she have to have a disability to get a ride on one of those vans?
She
Or
has to
how
have
does it work?
She has to have a mobility limitation. So, which effectively is some form of disability. Because our fixed route system actually serves most mobility needs. And we've put a lot of money into making our regular buses. All our regular buses have low floors. They have no stairs. All our regular buses have a lot of handholds. And for most people, including elderly people, our regular buses provide really good service. And so we're encouraging people to use the regular bus system as much as they possibly can. Now, if that doesn't work because the person can't get to a bus stop because there's a physical barrier or their ability to navigate the environment becomes difficult or their cognitive ability starts to fail, that's when they become eligible for the Link Plus system. And Link Plus is a door-to-door system that provides a lot of driver assistance, but it's very expensive to deliver. And so we do limit the eligibility to that to people that really can't use the regular system. But that is very personalized, and we're very proud of it. It's a great system. We use the smaller vehicles for that, and we do several hundred trips a day on that as well across the county. And it goes any place the regular buses go. It's a parallel system to what the regular bus system does.
Okay. And so, like in Aida's case, it sounds like she may be on Western Avenue. Maybe it's a little hard for her to get to her bus stop, but she's seeing buses going in front. So could she like maybe have the regular buses stop closer to her?
Well, the best
house?
thing for her to do would be to call and ask about travel training. And what we would do is we have staff that would look at what her needs are and see whether paratransit or Link Plus is the best option, or whether we could actually teach her how to use the bus and what are the right connections for her to use this. And a lot of the problem people see in mobility is that they really don't know how to use the buses because people didn't grow up with it here. And if they actually understand how simple it is in many cases, transit's a better option. And we've found that even a lot of our Link Plus passengers, once they understand how the regular bus system is to use, they actually move to it because it's a lot more convenient for them. They don't have to call it a day in advance. They don't have to make a reservation. It just works better for most people most of the time. And so that's been our effort, is to try to get people as much mobility as they can. And it's just easier to do that on a regular bus system if it works for them. And so that's the question. If that's the right solution, they should use the regular system. And if they need the more personalized, that's available for them as well.
Wow, that's great. Thank you for answering that question. If anyone has some questions, you can drop it into the chat, and Richard and Jim will answer those for you. One of the questions that comes up that we received a little bit before came from Jean. So Jean had asked, how is Link funded? Because right now, I think that, if I'm correct, you're not charging fares, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, our board adopted at least a one-year pilot of being fare-free. And we were fare-free during the first year of COVID, primarily because, at least initially, it was considered a risk to collect fares because of the distancing issues that we were required to maintain from passengers and our drivers. And then also the issue of counting fares. And when people thought COVID might be transmitted by contact, there was real questions about how were you going to actually count the money and do it in a safe fashion. And so we suspended fares to deal with those issues up front. But part of the challenge going forward has been, and we were analyzing our fare issues going forward, is that the cost of adapting to electronic fare collection, and we've had a lot of requests for people to have some form of electronic fares. The technology is so bloody expensive that it didn't make sense for us to invest in that. And right now the board said, let's keep it fare free, allow us to rebuild the ridership that we've lost and in the industry as a whole has been seeing, and we'll evaluate whether we want to continue this model or go back to a fare structure. And there's a number of things that we're looking at because there are some real concerns we have about being fare free long term. That being said, fares were never much of the revenue of the organization. At best, fares covered about 4% of our cost. Our revenue has been, for the most part, sales tax driven. We were and have been about 65 to 70% local sales tax has been our revenue. Federal money has been about 18 to 20% of our budget. Now this year, because of all the federal funds that were allocated for COVID relief, the federal money is much larger, and that's giving us some flexibility to do some interesting things. And that's also part of the discussion the board is having about what are the investments we want to make for the future of our valley, particularly in this time where things are changing so significantly with both the growth we're seeing, the increase in traffic, and adapting to some of these other changes that are happening around us with new developments and just the approval we just got of this funding for our Confluence Parkway and the change that will make in terms of how we'll be able to move around our valley. That will allow us to change some of our routing structures and actually move people differently in our valley as well.
So how will that be a game changer, the new parkway?
Well, when the parkway is actually finished, it'll be a huge change in terms of how we move buses in and out of the area, because one end of that parkway anchors at our operating base. And so every bus we have has to transverse Wenatchee Avenue. And so we move about 300 vehicles a day up and down Wenatchee Avenue. So if I can get out of the congestion on Wenatchee Avenue and get to Columbia Station much faster for shift changes, for moving empty buses to get them into service, that saves an enormous amount of operating dollars for us. And then my commuter buses from Leavenworth and Chelan, if they can get through the traffic much faster, that'll make those much more competitive trips compared to the cars and make those commutes a more attractive option for people as well. And so we think those are really game changers in terms of the public transit side of the equation. The other part of this is that entire application had a whole series of improvements in the road network, which were improvements in stops and bus priorities to allow the transit system to work better on those roads to make
Hold on, bus priorities?
Well, things like what's called a queue jump. So at intersections, there are a number of intersections that the right-hand turn lane, the bus will be able to use the right-hand turn lane, and it will go straight across, but it'll get a 10-second advantage, so it goes first, which allows it to get back to speed across intersection so that it doesn't have to wait through the cycles of the light. So if congestion builds, the bus can maintain schedule. It also doesn't delay the rest of the traffic. It actually works as a positive benefit. The bus keeps its schedule, but it also doesn't delay the rest of the traffic. And those type of advantages work to make the whole system work better. And that's been built into this application.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been talking with folks about, our new service center in Old Station in the north of Wenatchee there. We're really excited about it. And people are saying, I really hope that Link puts in some bus stations by there, because I'll absolutely, hands down, hop on a Link bus from Leavenworth or Chelan to come into work and then back out, because how easy is that? So just a little plug for Old Station.
Well, Old Station is one of the terminal points of most of our service. So.
Okay, that's fantastic.
So I have a question too, just about like e-bikes and bikes in general. I know the buses are outfitted with a rack on the front, are they not?
Yes.
For placing a bike, so we can. If I wanted to take my bike to Leavenworth and go riding, I could strap it on the front. And there's a training or something that I have to go through to.
No, there's not really a training. I mean, it's just if you need help, the operator will show you how to use the bike rack on it. We have 3-position racks on our buses that go intercity, and we have 2-position racks in our bikes here in town. And in fact, we've just upgraded all the racks to bike racks that can accommodate fat tire bikes as well, because those have become pretty common and they didn't fit in the previous racks we had. Now, that being said, we actually have times of the day where it's hard to find a spot on the bus for the bikes, because there's a lot of people using bikes in our community. And so we're also looking at other options to try to help people get bikes around.
Cool. Thank you.
So Richard Lyle's saying, my goodness, the system has so many complexities. Thanks for your great work. And she's right. There's so much going on. so many things to think about between temperature of your batteries and whether they're going to charge and how far they'll go and when's the next one and can we get some EV charging for the customers and what time will we be all of these different things, and then route planning on top of it, as well as it sounds like really working with customers to be able to do Link Plus when the need arises. There's a lot going on with Link to get people around.
And I think it's, Link's this is our 30th anniversary this year of Link, and we've become part of the fabric of our community. And I think one of the things that COVID did for, at least for me, and I know for a lot of our community members, is it sort of showed how critical we part of the infrastructure we become, at least for a significant part of our community. And that, the complexity of making transit work and making it relevant to a broader part of the population has been a big part of the mission that I know our board is trying to do. Is that we, one of the objectives has been we've carved out a part of the market and serve people that didn't have a lot of choices quite well. We expanded and said we're going to try to deal with the population that needs to work on shift work on weekends, and service work is a big part of our community's economy. So that was a really important thing to do. But we also want to be relevant to the rest of the population. And that's a big part of what some of these changes are doing. And we've also added, we now have passenger applications so that on your phone, you can download an app that allows you to see where every bus in the system is. You can see exactly how long it is till the bus gets to your bus stop, how many people are on that bus at the time. So you know whether it's crowded or not, whether you'll be able to get a seat. You can route plan off your phone. It's fantastic information that lets you know exactly what's happening. And so you don't have to wait at stops any length of time because you can know exactly when the vehicle is going to be coming.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, when you have these different sort of demographics that are looking to ride the bus for different reasons. I know that one of the groups that you had looked at a couple of years ago when I was chatting with you was, service workers up in mainly the Leavenworth area and also Chelan, and getting to work and then being able to catch a ride home for quite late in the evening was one thing that you guys were really focused on. And then also, you're right, like commuters that are coming in to the big city, the metropolitan area that is Wenatchee, and then heading back at the end of the day. So it's great that you're really considering all of the different kinds of riders.
And then it's as the housing crisis has grown in our community, we're starting to say, well, is Wenatchee now the housing base for these outlying communities, or has that moved? And we need to start thinking about, is the housing base Pateros? Is the housing base Moses Lake? I mean, do we need to be thinking about providing access to some even further outlying areas because of the jobs housing balance question we have in our community? And I'm not sure that's where we're going to have to go. I mean, that's not technically within our service boundaries, but that may be the need the community has. And so that is part of what we're looking at, trying to figure out how do we meet some of those needs, because transportation is the second largest expense a person has other than housing. And if you can reduce the cost of transportation, that may make housing more viable for a lot of people. And so it's part of the solution for some people to keep them in the community that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't have to be like, every single trip solution, as long as there's, like I think about the commuter question a lot, where, how much of our driving is alone in a giant vehicle. Most of us don't have electric vehicles. And so then we're, stuck in traffic, going through the grind, when really a lot of us are making the same routes. Wenatchee isn't so complex with its, street infrastructure that you have to guess wildly where people are going. They're generally going north-south, a little bit of east-west action. And Link buses travel those routes all the time. I live myself over in Douglas County by Costco. And so, yeah, I can hop on the A, and my kids love it. It's like an activity unto itself. If we're going to the library, we're hopping on the A and then doing the C. That's our route.
Yep.
So it can also be used for cheap entertainment.
The electric bus is smooth and quiet, so it's a different ride, and so I highly recommend it. It's go for experience. Get that electric glide.
And I know that Selena was doing some fun trips with kids, actually. This is pre-pandemic. I don't know if she's picked it back up, but what kind of outreach and things like that does Link do to the community to kind of educate and engage the next generation of our travelers?
Well, we haven't been doing much because of the pandemic in that area, other than some of the ongoing, and we reach out to the schools. We've had our ArtLink program for 30 years, and we've kept that going through the pandemic, which is one of the primary outreaches. We've had our Transit Ambassador program, where we work with high school age students with a variety of community events, trying to let people know what transit availability is out there. But some of those projects that Selena, who's one of our outreach people, has been doing, haven't been available because we haven't had the capacity with the limits that we've had under COVID. And so it's been kind of an interesting situation where we didn't really want more people on the buses right now, because even though it may look crazy when you see a bus go down the street with 3 people on it, in some cases that bus was full, and we were having to pass people by because of the limits that we were under currently. That's changing, and we've been working
tomorrow.
Yeah. So we've done some, what you've been seeing in our marketing has been things like every bus in the fleet has been equipped with sanitizers in our HVAC system. So we have ultraviolet sanitizers that actually clean the air. So you'll find that we kill all flu and cold and COVID virus that's in the vehicle almost instantaneously. So it's one of the safest environments around, because we were trying to get ahead of where our situation is. And those types of things, that it really is a safe environment, and that it is a place that people can trust to use, because unfortunately that message wasn't being put out that way. And the evidence didn't support that it was a transmission place anyway, but be that as it may, we are going to have to work on that concern of crowds are not something that people are comfortable with right now. The other issue that we have, and it's one that we're going to have for a while, is transit is covered by the Transportation Security Administration, and transit is still required to wear masks. So on a bus, you have to wear a mask, and we'll have masking requirements on vehicles and in our transit facilities until the airports are changed. So we're the last place that masks are still required. And that's federal law until that, and at least till September is what we've been told, and maybe longer. And that's not something we control, but it's what we're required to follow that as well. So that sends a weird message about, okay, you have to be masked to ride the vehicle, but we're going back to full capacity. It's a very interesting structure to talk about outreach and marketing when you're having to kind of do those things as well.
For sure. Yeah. So it sounds like the bus is sort of self-cleaning, as it were, with your scrubbers on your heating, ventilation, and AC system there. But it's kind of out of your hands in terms of whether people can wear a mask or not. At this point, I feel like everybody's had a mask on at some point. So it's kind of a bummer, but not a big deal at this juncture. So
people have been really good about it. I mean, we've had relatively few conflicts that have gotten anything beyond I don't want to, type of situations. And our operators have been wonderful in dealing with it. I've been very impressed with how they've handled circumstances that are out there, but it's a challenge.
Sure. And I haven't made you guys blush today, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you the best analogy. It's kind of like a bra, because it's uncomfortable. No one really wants to wear a mask. But if you go out without it and you're expected to, it gets kind of awkward really fast. So there you go. Okay, we're going to turn this bus, take a hard left here. I have one last question for you, unless there is something in the chat, which it looks like, this is last call for Link Transit questions. We have one from our very own Scott Stanford. He is curious what Link has done to save energy, not just use it to get people around, but to actually save energy in your operations and buildings.
So we've done actually the PUD's energy audits a couple times. We've upgraded our lighting twice now. First to high efficiency fluorescent, and then a couple years ago to high efficiency LEDs in both our Columbia Station building and our ops building. We've done that. We upgraded the heating and air conditioning systems in Columbia Station 10 years ago to higher efficiency systems, and went to a reflective roof on this building out here when we upgraded it 10 years ago. The building out at Old Station was actually built to do that originally, and so it was already a higher efficiency system put in. We put in water recycling, which actually reduces energy quite a bit. Put in a new bus wash about 4 years ago, which reduces our energy fairly substantially. I think what else?
And that reduces energy. How? The water.
Well, when you're bringing fresh water in and you're dumping it down the drains, it uses it differently, and it actually you don't have to reheat it when you're washing it because it's still warmer. So that's part of the energy savings. You don't re-soap it, which also saves energy. And I'm trying to think what the other one was. I think it's like it was a 35% energy savings by doing water recycling is what it showed us, let alone the water savings that you got out of that.
Yeah, we do live in a desert, so that's a great, I'm
Yeah,
a big fan,
exactly.
even if it weren't to save all of the energy that it does by not having to heat, frigid cold water coming out of the tap. That's great.
Well, and there's some
Okay.
other energy involved when you're turning your water on at the faucet. You don't see it, but there's some big pumps involved in getting that water out of the ground and pumping it through the piping system to get it up into your home, into your facility. So there's some savings there that wouldn't show up on their meter, but does show up in your water bill.
The city thanks you.
Right.
That's great. Yeah. And I know that with your lighting programs, Chelan PUD was able to help out with our business incentives on those, help cover the cost, which this year through the end of 2021, we can cover up to 100% of those business lighting upgrade costs. Before there was a cap at 75%. We might go back to that, just saying. So if you have some pet projects, now is the time, depending on how much energy it saves. Just a little plug there.
And it was a great assist at the time we did them. So again, thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. All right. Last call in the chat. We are all clear, guys. Jim, Richard, thank you so much for sharing, for answering even some tough questions out there. Is there anything you want to leave with?
I was going to say we had one other energy savings things we did that I think might be a kind of surprising one. We've invested in these things called big belly trash compactors we have installed in our Chelan and our Leavenworth park and rides. And we spend a surprising amount of gasoline and staff time emptying garbage cans at bus stops. And the big belly compactors, they're solar powered, and they have a wireless internet connection that tells us when they're full. So we only send someone to empty them when they become full.
This is brilliant.
And so we use about a quarter of the energy we used to use. We use about a quarter of the staff time it take to empty those garbage cans. They pay for themselves in the savings we have, and we use a lot less energy and a lot less time just by doing less garbage.
Can you just jump on our energy audits and things like that? I feel like you come up with the best system thinking ideas where, your car wash or your bus wash to your trash compactors, like all of these things are things that I would think would be outside the scope of transit, but you always seem to find them. How do you do it?
Good ideas are just good ideas. So.
Sure. All right, Jim, anything else to leave us with? Oh, you're on mute, bud.
I just want to say that Richard really is a rock star when it comes to his innovation and the work that he's done in moving Link Forward Transit on their electric buses, all this innovation that they're doing with washers and how they've expanded their route and everything. I just compliments out there to Richard and the leadership that he's provided for Link Transit. It's incredible. It's good.
Yeah, I second it. Yeah, great. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll drop a few more links into our comments related to jobs at Link Transit, as well as those new charging stations for personal electric vehicles that you've put into your park and ride. Again, thank you so much to both of you.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Stay cool. Have a great afternoon.
Absolutely. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.